In the early morning chill of Detroit, Michigan, fog always rested softly on the narrow alleys between old brick buildings. Streetlights flickered like tired stars, and the silence was broken only by the rustle of cardboard being dragged along the pavement. That cardboard belonged to a thin, messy-haired boy named Ethan Walker, just 11 years old. Ethan's shoes had holes on both sides, his coat was 2 sizes too big, and his gloves didn't match. But his eyes were bright. Bright with something money could not buy, hope. Detroit wasn't the city it used to be. Old factories had closed years ago, leaving behind rusted gates, empty warehouses, and tired people. Ethan's father, Walter Walker, had once worked in one of those factories until an accident left him unable to walk without a cane. Since then, the only thing that kept them alive was Ethan's cardboard collecting job. Every morning before school, Ethan walked past dumpsters and behind restaurants, pulling a squeaky old metal cart. He searched for cardboard, newspapers, and anything the recycling center might buy. People whispered when he walked by, "That's the Walker kid. His father's crippled. Poor family." But Ethan never stopped. He never answered. He just kept pulling that cart, because in his heart, there was a promise: one day, I won't collect cardboard. One day, I will make it. Ethan's mother, Helen, had passed away when he was 7. She used to tell him stories about trees, how one tree could become dozens of books, hundreds of notebooks, or a million paper dreams. She used to say, everything big starts small. Even a mighty forest once began as a single seed. Maybe that was why Ethan loved paper, maybe that was why he believed cardboard wasn't junk, maybe its story wasn't over yet. That Thursday morning, like always, Ethan reached the recycling center near Jefferson Avenue. The owner, Mr. Franklin, was a grumpy old man with a heart buried deep, deep down. "You again, Walker?" Mr. Franklin grumbled. "Show me what you've got." Ethan smiled, lifting his bag of cardboard and newspapers. 15 pounds today. The old man weighed it. $7. Take it or leave it. Ethan took it. $7 meant bread, maybe a little milk, maybe even a notebook for school. At school, things weren't easier. He didn't have a proper backpack, just a plastic bag. He sat at the back of the classroom, quiet but focused. While others whispered, he paid attention. He wasn't the smartest, but he was the most determined. One afternoon, his teacher, Mrs. Harper, noticed Ethan staying late in the classroom. "Ethan, don't you need to go home?" He hesitated. "I don't have internet at home. Can I finish my homework here?" She looked at him, surprised. And then she noticed something. The notebook he was writing in was pieced together from different bits of discarded paper, stapled by hand. "Where did you get this notebook?" Ethan looked down, shy. "I made it. From paper I collected." Something in Mrs. Harper's heart melted. "You made this? With your own hands?" He nodded. She smiled softly. "Ethan, one day, people won't just use notebooks. They'll use something you created." He didn't know it then, but that sentence would stay with him for years. The Detroit winter that year was harsher than usual. Snow covered the cracked sidewalks, turning everything white, except Ethan's shoes, which were soaked and muddy. Every step made a soft squishing sound, but he ignored the cold, pulling his cart down the alley. He was bigger now, 15 years old, taller, stronger, and wiser. But the cart was still the same old rusty thing with a wobbly wheel. He knew every recycling bin in the Jefferson district, and most business owners knew him too. Some ignored him. Some pitied him, but a few, just a few, respected him. One of them was a cafe owner named Mr. Lewis. He ran a small coffee shop called Paper Cup Cafe, where writers, students, and musicians gathered. He always saved cardboard for Ethan, neatly stacked, tied with rope, like gifts. One morning, Mr. Lewis handed Ethan his bundles. "You know, kid, you're not like others. Most people look down when they walk. But you," he paused, studying the boy's determined face, "you always look forward." Ethan smiled politely, but inside, the words warmed him more than any coat. At school, things were slowly changing too. That he didn't sit in the back row anymore, that he didn't hide his handmade notebooks anymore. His teacher, Mrs. Harper, had once told the class, "Success isn't about what you have. It's about what you make from what you have." And everyone silently looked at Ethan. Some began to respect him. Some were inspired by him, some envied him, but Ethan didn't care that he had started reading business books from the public library. He didn't fully understand them at first, but a librarian named Ms. Emily Carter helped. She saw something rare in Ethan. "You remind me of the boy in the pursuit of happiness," she said once. Ethan smiled. "The story about the man who became rich?" "No," she replied softly. "The story about the man who never stopped trying." One evening, Ethan visited an old abandoned paper mill on Brodie Street. He stood there, staring through the fence. Rusty machines, broken windows, silent, sad buildings, but he didn't see ruins. That he saw future machines, repaired buildings, humming factories, and workers clocking in. He imagined paper rolling through machines, smooth, clean, brand new, paper that would become books, dreams, contracts, love letters, history. He closed his eyes, touched the fence, and whispered, "One day, I won't collect cardboard. One day, I will make it." Years passed. Ethan graduated high school, not top of his class, but full of purpose. He couldn't afford college, so he took every job he could: warehouse loader, factory cleaner, library assistant, call center agent. But late every night, in his small apartment, Ethan studied business, recycling industry, paper manufacturing, sustainable eco-solutions, startup management. He started a small business with just $280, an old pickup truck, and 2 volunteers, his childhood friends Tyler Brooks and Lucas Hill. They called it Green Loop Recycling. They collected cardboard, just like old times, but this time, it wasn't just for survival. It was for a vision. They didn't just sell it raw, they processed it, shredded it, compressed it, and resold it at higher value. Slowly, businesses took notice. One day, Ethan stood in front of the old Brodie Street paper mill again, but this time, he didn't stand outside the fence. He was inside. The bank official looked at him. "Mr. Walker, are you sure about this? Buying a factory is a massive risk. You're only 29. Ethan smiled. "I've been preparing for this since I was 11. The official raised an eyebrow. "We ran the numbers. Your recycling company has tripled in value in 3 years. Your partnerships, eco-certifications, and investor interest are significant. But buying the largest paper manufacturing facility in the city? That's bold." Ethan looked up at the abandoned structure, the same one he had whispered dreams to years ago. "It's not abandoned," he said quietly, "it's waiting." After a long pause, the official extended his hand. "Then let's bring it back to life." That day, the papers were signed. Ethan didn't just buy land. He didn't just buy machines. He bought a future. But the biggest moment came when he drove his new company truck through the city, now labeled proudly, Walker Paper Industries, turning waste into hope. It wasn't just a slogan. It was his story. The old paper mill on Brodie Street had been silent for 13 years, its windows were shattered, its machines covered in dust, and its walls echoed with forgotten voices of workers who once spent their lives there. Then, one morning, the silence broke, not with machines, not with workers, but with the sound of a single man walking through the factory floor, slowly, thoughtfully, with his hand trailing along cold steel. Ethan Walker. He wasn't that little boy with a cardboard cart anymore. He was the new owner. Beside him walked his 2 loyal friends, now business partners, Tyler Brooks, head of logistics, and Lucas Hill, head of operations. Lucas shook his head as he looked around. "Man, this place is dying." Ethan stopped walking. "No," he said quietly. "It's waiting to be reborn." A week later, Ethan gathered 20 former factory workers, most of whom had worked in this mill before it shut down. One of them, a gray-bearded man with strong hands, stepped forward. "You're the young guy who bought this old place?" "Yes, sir," Ethan replied. "And you think you can bring it back to life?" the man challenged. Ethan looked around. The workers waited. Skeptical. Curious. Hoping. He took a deep breath. "I grew up collecting cardboard," he began. The crowd murmured. They thought it was a joke, but I didn't see trash. I saw unfinished stories. I saw paper that could become letters, diaries, passports, books, dreams. Silence filled the room. Paper isn't just paper, Ethan said. It's memory. It's communication. It's education. And this factory doesn't just make paper. It makes possibilities. That day, not all, but some chose to believe in him, and that was enough. But dreams don't protect against reality. Running a factory wasn't like running a pickup truck recycling business. There were permits, machine repairs, environmental audits, union regulations, and, worst of all, investors who doubted him. One investor, Mr. Raymond Cole, visited the facility after 2 months. "What am I looking at?" he said with a cold laugh. "Old machines, outdated technology, inexperienced staff, and a dreamer." Ethan stayed calm. "We are modernizing. We have pilot results for recycled paper production using zero-bleach technology." Mr. Cole waved him off. "You don't have the money. You don't have the expertise. Dreams don't build factories, Mr. Walker." "No," Ethan said steadily, "but people do." Weeks passed, bills piled up. Machines broke down. One investor pulled out. Then another. Workers got nervous. Some left. At night, Ethan sat alone in his dusty office, staring at old blueprints and bank emails. Loan delayed. Payment due. Insufficient funds. His friends tried to help. "Tyler, maybe we should sell part of the company." "Lucas, maybe it was too big. Too fast." Ethan said nothing. His eyes were red, but not from tears, from determination. One Friday evening, Ethan drove to a landfill site outside Detroit. Rows of mountains made of waste, plastic, bottles, cardboard, paper. He stood there for hours, silent. He saw his past, the streets. The garbage bags. The cardboard. The cold mornings. He saw his mother, telling him everything big starts small. Suddenly, something clicked. He didn't need to fight the big paper companies. He needed to create something they couldn't. Ultra-recycled paper, low energy, low chemical use, made from entirely post-consumer waste, cardboard, magazines, junk mail. He didn't need to compete. He needed to innovate. The next week, Ethan met with MIT material science student Emma Reed, who had been studying eco-pulping technologies. She was young, smart, sharp, and believed in the mission. Together, they built a small experimental pulping chamber using modified parts from old machines. The result? A thinner, smoother, stronger paper, made from trash, made from stories. Ethan named it Hope Sheet. First launched in local schools, hospitals, and community centers. They didn't sell a product, they sold a purpose. Students wrote essays on it. Hospitals printed medical forms on it. A small publishing house produced children's books using it. Books made from stories once thrown away. The factory slowly revived. Investors didn't just return, they lined up. 2 years later, Walker Paper Industries became Michigan's largest recycled paper producer. The factory employed 480 people, many were the same workers who had once believed in him. And one crisp morning, a reporter interviewed Ethan in his office, where an old, rusty cartwheel hung on the wall. "Mr. Walker," the reporter asked, "what made you believe this would work?" Ethan smiled and looked at the wheel. "Because I learned something while collecting cardboard." "What was that?" He turned to the reporter. "A thing's value isn't about what it is. It's about what it can become." By the time Ethan Walker turned 30, Walker Paper Industries had grown far beyond Detroit. A national contract with a major textbook publisher had secured steady revenue. Schools from Michigan to New York were receiving recycled textbooks printed on Hope Sheet. Environmental awards started piling up, and Ethan was often invited to speak at conferences about sustainability, innovation, and perseverance. But no matter the accolades or the wealth, Ethan never forgot his roots. One cold December morning, Ethan returned to the neighborhood where it all began. The streets smelled of wet asphalt and fried food. The brick buildings were older, but familiar. And the alleys still carried the echoes of a boy dragging a squeaky cart. He walked past the corner where he had first found cardboard. Nothing had changed. Or maybe, everything had. A small boy was tugging a cart behind him, shoes too big, gloves mismatched, coat hanging loose. Ethan stopped and watched. The boy's eyes were bright. Determined. Hopeful. Ethan remembered himself, 11 years old. He walked up to the boy and crouched down to his level. "Hey there," he said softly. That's a heavy load you're pulling. The boy looked up. Eyes wide. Sir. I just. I need this for money. Ethan nodded. I know. I used to do the same. The boy tilted his head. Really? Yes, Ethan said. A small smile forming. But one day, I built something much bigger than this cart. You can too. The boy's eyes sparkled with curiosity and disbelief. Your shoes, Ethan noticed, they look small on your feet. The boy laughed nervously. They're my brother's. Ethan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a pair of brand new sneakers, neatly tied, for you, he said. Start here. Don't stop. The boy stared. Sir. Thank you. You're welcome. But remember, Ethan paused. The value isn't in what you have. It's in what you can make of it. And with that, Ethan walked away, leaving the boy staring at the gift, hope glowing in his young eyes. Back at the factory, life was in full motion. Machines hummed, workers moved with purpose, and the smell of fresh pulp filled the air. Ethan stood on the top floor, overlooking the production line. He saw children's books, notebooks, and stacks of hope sheet ready to ship across the country. A visitor approached, Emma Reed, now his partner in innovation. You did it, she said, smiling. This factory, this company, it's incredible. Ethan nodded. It's not just mine. It belongs to everyone who believed, everyone who worked, everyone who dared to dream. Emma paused. Do you ever think about your mom? He smiled wistfully. Every day. She would have been proud. But more than that, she would have reminded me that every big thing starts with a small seed. And Ethan looked around the factory, machines, workers, contracts, books, and remembered his cart full of cardboard, dragged through snow and mud. A tear slid down his cheek. Not from sadness, but from full-circle gratitude. By the time the 25th anniversary of his childhood discovery arrived, Ethan had purchased every major paper mill in Detroit. Not out of greed. Out of purpose. Out of the belief that no child should ever feel that cardboard is worthless. At the grand celebration, reporters asked him, Mr. Walker, what's next? He looked out at the crowd of workers, partners, and young dreamers like the boy he had met years ago. Next, he said, smiling. Next, is to remind the world that hope, determination, and hard work can turn even the smallest thing into an empire. And that empire can change lives. Ethan's story spread nationwide, inspiring countless children, young entrepreneurs, and dreamers everywhere. The boy who once dragged a cardboard cart became the man who owned the largest paper empire in Detroit, proving that no beginning is too small, no dream too big, and no obstacle too great. And on a quiet evening, in the factory office that once seemed impossible to fill, Ethan looked at the old cart well mounted on the wall, a relic of his past, and whispered, thank you, for everything. Because in the end, cardboard wasn't just cardboard. It was a symbol of hope, perseverance, and the power to create a future no one else could imagine. Detroit had changed, but for Ethan Walker, the city still carried the smell of rain on asphalt, the echo of carts scraping the pavement, and the humble beginnings of a boy who dreamed too big for his small shoes. By the time Ethan was 35, Walker Paper Industries wasn't just a factory, it was a movement. Schools, businesses, and communities across the Midwest were using Hope Sheet, and Ethan had launched a scholarship fund for children in need, giving them tools, books, and mentorship to chase their dreams. One crisp spring morning, Ethan invited the first children of his program to the factory. He walked them through the enormous machines, the neat stacks of recycled paper, and the buzzing assembly lines. A little girl tugged on his sleeve. Mr. Walker, is it true you used to collect cardboard? He knelt down and smiled. Yes. Every day. I thought it was trash, but really, it was a treasure waiting to be discovered. The children's eyes widened. You see, Ethan continued, no matter where you start, your dreams are worth more than the obstacles in front of you. Hard work, patience, and believing in yourself can turn even the smallest thing into something big enough to change the world. That evening, as the sun set over Detroit, Ethan visited his old neighborhood. The streets were quiet. The alleys where he had dragged his squeaky cart were now clean, and a few small shops had opened where empty lots once stood. He stopped at the corner where he had met the little boy years ago, the boy whose shoes were too big and whose cart was heavy with cardboard. Now, the boy, now a teenager, was there, helping a younger child carry recycled boxes. Ethan smiled. He approached silently, placing a hand on the teen's shoulder. "Keep going," Ethan said softly. "You're building something that matters." The teen looked up in awe. I want to be like you." Ethan shook his head, smiling. "No, you can be even better." Back at his office, Ethan reflected on the journey. A small wooden cart, a few dollars in hand, and dreams bigger than his circumstances had carried him to an empire built on hope and hard work. That he thought of his mother, Helen, whose stories of trees and growth had planted the seed in him. He thought of Mrs. Harper, Miss Carter, Tyler, Lucas, Emma, and every single person who believed when the world doubted, and then he thought of the city itself, Detroit. Not just the buildings, streets, and factories, but the people. The resilience. The possibility. He realized something. Success wasn't just about wealth or factories. It was about creating opportunities for others. Years later, Ethan sat in a lecture hall at a prestigious university, invited to speak about entrepreneurship and social impact. The audience was filled with students, business leaders, and aspiring innovators. A young woman raised her hand. "Mr. Walker, what was the hardest part?" Ethan paused, thinking of the freezing mornings, the broken machines, the months of uncertainty. "The hardest part," he said finally, "was believing that the smallest things, the cardboard, the scraps, the moments everyone else overlooks, could truly grow into something meaningful. But once you believe, there's no turning back." The audience erupted in applause. But Ethan wasn't thinking about the applause. He was thinking about the boy he once was, and that night, he returned home, looked at the cartwheel mounted above his desk, and whispered, "From cardboard to empire, we did it." Epilogue. Detroit's skyline reflected in the glass of Walker Paper Industries headquarters. Inside, machines hummed, workers smiled, and children visited regularly to learn, play, and dream. Ethan Walker, once a boy with torn shoes and a cardboard cart, had built more than a company. He had built a legacy. A legacy that reminded everyone, no matter where you start, no dream is too small, and no dreamer too ordinary. Every empire begins with a single step, a single hope, a single piece of cardboard. And somewhere, in a quiet alley, a little boy tugged a cart, dreaming bigger than his shoes could carry, just like Ethan once did.